you're going from here. So essentially, you're having to make a tighter turning into the corner. So that's why track position is particularly important. So it should be a really big focal point on when you're learning a new track, for instance, is establish what is called a tipping point. Now, that's going to be his tipping point. So he's going to tip in from there and create that nice radius around the corner. Building up reference points is particularly important. And the first one, of course, when you're approaching a corner is the point that you put the brake on. So reference 1 is braking reference, and then you'll brake into a corner. And reference 2, generally speaking, tipping point, the point that you decide you're going to start tipping in left or right, whichever way the corner kind of goes. So the second reference you need to try and record is the tipping point. Now, you potentially can still be braking at that point. Braking into a corner, you have to get comfortable with the idea. This is where the big division from road riding to track riding is. Road riding, the general school of thought, is you kill all the speed before you start to tip into a corner. And as you, so effectively your slow point is the point that you tip into the corner. And at that point, you then open the throttle slightly and ride through the corner on a positive throttle. On a racetrack, the slow point is almost where the apex of the corner is, which means that you're still slowing down all the way into the corner until a point where you then open the throttle and start to accelerate out of the corner. Now, that differs slightly if you get a huge, big radius. But here, for instance, the slow point of that corner, the apex, which is somewhere down there. So you've been braking for some time now. You can continue braking after you start to tip into the corner. But if you've been braking particularly hard, essentially, it's not a particularly good idea to carry on braking really hard. A couple of reasons is if you're braking really hard and you lean the bike over, and the further and further over you go, you're asking an awful lot from the front tyre. And eventually, you're going to get to a situation where the tyre will lose grip and you may end up having an incident. As you get to the tipping point, that's the point where you still potentially brake, but you realistically have to stop heavy braking and ease back slightly on the brake. And the further over you lean in the bike, the less and less and less brake essentially you can use. And so from the point that you start to release the brake, but you keep the brake on, that's called trail braking, where you're sort of dragging the brake into the corner. Now, there comes a point when you're leaning into a corner when if you carry on braking, what the bike is effectively trying to sit up. You can try this on almost any race circuit you want to go to, or even on the road potentially. As you run into a corner, lightly hold the brake on and you'll be sort of pushing the bars, counter steering the bars to get the bike into the corner. When you let the brake go, the bike sort of drops onto its side. It's because at a certain angle of lean, the bike wants to sit up. It's trying to sit the bike up on the brakes. So this is another reason why it's not a great idea to brake super hard and continue to lean the bike over, because the bike's trying to sit you up and you're trying to pull it down. And all of that action, all of that effect is happening on the front tyre. So braking is a really important thing that you have to work on a lot. Tighter turn. Because you're running in now with no brakes, you're on a very similar line to the instructors. But because he's slowed fractionally more than you, you effectively end up kind of running wide out the corner. Actually, you've ended up running fairly wide here, where the instructor did a much tighter turn. I mean, if you think of the middle of the track as the exit, as long as you're to the right of the middle, it's okay. If you're in the middle of the track, that's more or less where I am most of the laps. But the further out you go out to the left, you see how tight the corner is. It's going to take you more time, basically, to get from the extreme left-hand side of the track over to the right-hand side of the track to open this radius up. So position, track position, referencing, braking, tipping, apexes, you need to sort of be confident in your braking.